Welcome to Legend Story Vault, where we dive deep into the lives of music's greatest icons. In today's episode, we explore the untold story of Malcolm Young, pronounced Malcolm Young, the quiet Scots-Australian guitarist who was the engine of ACDC's thunderous sound. From his humble beginnings and fierce work ethic to the riffs that fueled rock's biggest hits, we'll trace how this unassuming figure became the backbone of one of the world's loudest bands. Sit back, crank up the volume, and let's honor the legacy of Malcolm Young. Malcolm Mitchell Young was born on January 6, 1953, in Glasgow, Scotland. His family was large and musical. His older brother George had already found fame with Sydney's 1960s rock band the Easy Beats. In fact, in 1963, during Scotland's Big Freeze, Malcolm, aged 10, and his family took an assisted migration offer and emigrated to Sydney, Australia. It was a life-changing move. In Australia, young Malcolm immersed himself in music. The Young household was full of players, and George's success in the Easy Beats lit a fire under him. By 1968, family friend Harry Vanda, ex-Easy Beats, had given Malcolm his beloved Gretsch Jet Firebird guitar, the instrument he would wield for decades. As he told Rolling Stone Australia, "As a kid, it started with Chuck Berry. You can't forget Chuck Berry. I mean, just about everything he did back then was great." In 1973, Malcolm, then 20, and his younger brother Angus, 18, formed ACDC in Sydney. The name symbolized both brothers' Swiss Army knife approach to rock, alternating current, direct current, and their belief in hard-hitting, no-frills rock and roll. Malcolm took the rhythm guitar role, standing behind Angus and handling the riffs that would drive each song. The band cut its teeth playing bars in small clubs, often dreaming of, as Malcolm once mused, "If we could just work in clubs for the rest of our lives." A sentiment he shared in early interviews. In those formative years, he also endured day jobs to support the band, from a sewing machine repairman to an apprentice fitter and turner and storeman. But even the clatter of factory machinery became, to him, a source of musical rhythm. This tough work ethic was instilled by his father and reflected Malcolm's mindset. No nonsense, all hustle. As one guardian of his legacy put it, Malcolm was the quiet one, deep and intensely aware. The planner who handled the boring, unshowy stuff so the stars could shine. Key early milestones. 1953. Born in Glasgow, Scotland. 1963. Young family emigrates to Sydney, Australia. 1968. Receives his famous Gretsch guitar. Discovers rock idols, Berry, Beatles, Stones. 1973. Co-founds ACDC with Angus Young, laying down the template for the band's riff-driven rock. Malcolm Young's genius lay in restraint and precision. He played simple, driving chord riffs with incredible feel, each note given room to breathe, and that became ACDC's trademark. As The Guardian explained, Malcolm was the master of making as little as necessary do as much as possible. The band's music was low input, high impact. In practice, Malcolm would cut the amp on his massive Marshall stacks way down in the studio, picking close-mic'd lines so that the texture of every chord came through. On stage, he played with blinders on, standing slightly behind Angus, often almost lost in the shadows, but every power chord he struck was like thunder. Famed rock producer Terry Manning once praised Malcolm's rhythm playing as on par with Booker T. And the MG's legend Steve Cropper, and that does not oversell him. And indeed, every ACDC song from the 1970s onward had Malcolm's fingerprints on it. Just look at the song credits. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, 1976. Let There Be Rock, 1977. Whole Lotta Rosie, 1977. Highway to Hell, 1979. Back in Black, 1980. You Shook Me All Night Long, 1980. And that barely scratches the surface. His name as co-writer appears on dozens of ACDC classics. In those formative years, he also endured day jobs to support the band, from a sewing machine repairman to an apprentice fitter and turner and storeman. But even the clatter of factory machinery became, to him, a source of musical rhythm. This tough work ethic was instilled by his father and reflected Malcolm's mindset. No nonsense, all hustle. As one guardian of his legacy put it, Malcolm was the quiet one, deep and intensely aware. The planner who handled the boring, unshowy stuff so the stars could shine. Key early milestones. 1953. Born in Glasgow, Scotland. 1963. Young family emigrates to Sydney, Australia. 1968. Receives his famous Gretsch guitar. Discovers rock idols, Berry, Beatles, Stones. 1973, co-founds ACDC with Angus Young, laying down the template for the band's riff-driven rock. Malcolm Young's genius lay in restraint and precision. He played simple, driving chord riffs with incredible feel, each note given room to breathe, and that became ACDC's trademark. As The Guardian explained, Malcolm was the master of making as little as necessary do as much as possible. The band's music was low input, high impact. In practice, Malcolm would cut the amp on his massive Marshall stacks way down in the studio, picking close-mic'd lines so that the texture of every chord came through. On stage, he played with blinders on, standing slightly behind Angus, often almost lost in the shadows, but every power chord he struck was like thunder. Famed rock producer Terry Manning once praised Malcolm's rhythm playing as on par with Booker T. And the MG's legend Steve Cropper, and that does not oversell him. And indeed, every AC/DC song from the 1970s onward had Malcolm's fingerprints on it. Just look at the song credits. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, 1976. Let There Be Rock, 1977. Whole Lotta Rosie, 1977. Highway to Hell, 1979. Back in Black, 1980. You Shook Me All Night Long, 1980. And that barely scratches the surface. His name as co-writer appears on dozens of AC/DC classics. Iconic riffs. Co-written by Malcolm Young. Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, Let There Be Rock, Whole Lotta Rosie, Highway to Hell, Back in Black, You Shook Me All Night Long, For Those About to Rock, Hell's Bells, and many more. Even as AC/DC's singer or lead guitarist took center stage, Malcolm's quiet yet unyielding presence was the heartbeat of the band. He set the pace backstage and on stage, once structuring AC/DC's stage movements like a choreographed revue, and insisted on relentless rehearsal. "I've always had Malcolm," Angus later said. "I could dream up some idea and he'd tell me if it was stupid. He's probably more practical than me. I'm a bit of a dreamer. He has more get up and go. It's always different. It's unique." In other words, Angus had the wild ideas and showmanship, and Malcolm refined them into something bulletproof. That ethic paid off. Their third album, Let There Be Rock, 1977, broke them internationally, and they followed it with a string of vault classics. Fans in low-lit clubs and on sun-baked Sydney pub patios were the first to chant AC/DC, as Malcolm played that timeless riff of Whole Lotta Rosie. On film, too, he helped make the music immortal. For example, the 1979 concert movie AC/DC, Let There Be Rock, filmed in Paris, captures Malcolm in a flat cap pounding through songs like Let There Be Rock and Hell's Bells, driving the band's raw energy on screen. By 1979, AC/DC was on a meteoric rise headlining arenas. But heartbreak struck on February 19, 1980, when lead singer Bon Scott died unexpectedly. The loss could have ended AC/DC, but Malcolm Young wouldn't let it. As Rolling Stone Australia noted, following the death of Bon Scott, the decision to continue was down to Malcolm. Simply calling time would have been a slap in the face of the tough, hard-working character AC/DC represented. True to form, Malcolm pushed the band forward. They quickly auditioned replacements and landed on Brian Johnson. Malcolm helped Brian find his footing on the already written material. Brian Johnson himself recalled those weeks as the happiest 6 weeks I ever had, joining the band, in part because Malcolm and Angus welcomed him so strongly. The result was Back in Black, AC/DC's 1980 album tribute to Bon. Angus famously called Back in Black our tribute to Bon. In the studio, Malcolm worked with Brian to finish songs that Malcolm and Angus had been crafting together. As Malcolm later dryly observed, Back in Black is the album we're proud of because we thought it was the end of the band, to be honest. After Bon's death, we thought, well, this is it really. The album exploded globally, and rock history was born. Hits like Hell's Bells, You Shook Me All Night Long, and the title track carry Malcolm's fingerprints, his riffs and songwriting ethos, even though Bon was gone. One vivid image from this era. On stage during the Back in Black tour, thousands watched as Malcolm stood unflinchingly behind Brian and Angus, steady as ever. Some fans noted the eerie symmetry. Just as Bon's ghost was said to ride with them on those tours, Malcolm now carried the band on his shoulders in many ways. As one writer put it when Brian Johnson joined later, the ghost of Bon Scott rides with AC/DC. Decades later, Angus would reflect that making Back in Black reminded him of his brother Malcolm. It felt like Bond's spirit was with us, and I still feel Malcolm's presence in everything we do. Malcolm was famously low-key off stage. He rarely gave interviews, and when he did, he was blunt, dry, even reluctant. As a 2014 Guardian profile quipped, "Bloke who plays rhythm guitar, stands at the back of the stage, never says anything, almost never gives interviews." Yet that same piece insists that to call him a background figure so wholly undersells the role Malcolm Young played. For most of his life, he was almost painfully private. No guitar solos, no flamboyant costumes, no rock star antics. That was Malcolm's choice. His priority was the song and the band, not the spotlight. Off the tour bus, Malcolm was no drunken rock star stereotype. In fact, the earliest band stories say he quietly defeated alcohol. After ACDC conquered America, Malcolm noticed the lifestyle was getting to him. He was only about 5'3", and he tried to keep up with the big guys and rock's wild reputation. But as he told an interviewer years later, "Just a case of rock and roll. I'm just a little guy, I was trying to keep up. It just got to me. So it was just a matter of cutting it, the alcohol right out." He stopped drinking and got clean, without any fanfare. Rolling Stone noted that, without any fanfare, he successfully beat a battle with the bottle. This speaks to his disciplined character. Focus on the music and get sober. No press releases needed. In every aspect, Malcolm lived austere and practical. He once said, "If you're a musician, it's a bit like being on the Titanic. The band goes down with the ship. That's how I view it." He joked that whenever one band member fell, they all went down. ACDC was his life's work, and he treated it as such. Angus later recalled Malcolm telling him, "You keep going." In other words, the band must endure and carry on the music. By the late 2000s, age and fate were catching up. During the making of ACDC's 2008 album Black Ice, Angus noticed something troubling. Malcolm was occasionally forgetting parts of songs he'd played for decades. In the studio, Angus gently asked if Malcolm wanted to continue, and Malcolm insisted, "Let's go ahead." But behind the scenes, doctors were called. After Black Ice was completed, Malcolm was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. He pushed on and joined the lengthy Black Ice World Tour, 2008 to 2010, but his role became more static. On stage, he often stood at the back under dim lights. Fans later said his usual lack of presence in the spotlight was also tragically apt, given his illness. By the final show of that tour, on June 28, 2010 in Bilbao, Spain, Malcolm played for the last time with ACDC. Meanwhile, other health issues loomed. In 2012, Brian Johnson revealed that an unnamed band member was seriously ill. It turned out to be Malcolm. Doctors discovered lung cancer, likely from decades of cigarette smoke and heart problems. Malcolm fought through surgery and even received a pacemaker, but dementia steadily worsened. Angus later said that by then he barely recognized his big brother some days. For fans in the band, it became heartbreakingly clear that Malcolm's driving force was fading. On April 12, 2014, ACDC made a blunt statement to fans. After 40 years of life dedicated to ACDC, guitarist and founding member Malcolm Young is taking a break from the band due to ill health. ACDC asks that Malcolm and his family's privacy be respected during this time. The band will continue to make music. In September 2014, they quietly confirmed Malcolm would not rejoin, effectively ending his career. It was a stunning moment, a rock band so famously private admitting illness. But it was Malcolm's choice. He had always shielded personal matters from the media. Malcolm Young passed away on November 18, 2017, at the age of 64. The cause was complications from dementia and related illnesses. In the wake of his death, rock fans and musicians poured out tributes. Angus said simply, "If he was here today, he'd be saying, 'Keep on rockin'.' And true to form, he'd probably be yelling it from the back of the stage rather than a podium." Brian Johnson remembered him as a beautiful man, a wonderful person, and reflected that he gave rock and roll a fist that was all Malcolm's signature chord stabs and backbeat grit. Music journalists and peers pointed out that ACDC without Malcolm would not be ACDC. With Malcolm, ACDC found their soul, one writer noted, calling him implacable, immutable, irreplaceable. In tribute, ACDC honored Malcolm's legacy on their 2020 album Power Up. Every track on Power Up, including the single Shot in the Dark, was built from riffs and ideas Malcolm had co-written with Angus over the years. Angus explained that Malcolm had left behind a ton of guitar riffs, which the band used. Hence, Malcolm is credited as a co-writer on all 12 songs. Angus said the album title summed him up. When he put on that guitar, he was one big guitar. When he played guitar, it sounded like there were two people playing. Brian Johnson smiled that he would have been proud of this album. In other words, even after his passing, Malcolm Young's spirit and creative spark literally power ACDC's new music.